Good afternoon. I'm Nick Knight, and this is my assistant, Tom Alexander.
Good afternoon.
And we're here doing an AMA, which is the moment that we try and go through all the questions that have been asked, or a lot of the questions have been asked on my Instagram, or on the Show Studio Instagram, or the Show Studio Facebook, or the Show Studio YouTube channel. It's just a way of talking back to the audience, because a lot of you ask questions, and I think it's only fair and correct that I should try and answer them. So we decided the best way of doing that is for me to try and actually just sit in front of this camera with Tom and just try and go through them and see what we can do. I've said to myself I'll keep this to half an hour, so it hopefully won't go on much more than that, but it does mean that I'll have to try and be a little bit more succinct with some of my answers and not go off into slightly kind of unrelated topics. But anyway, let's try and be quick. I'll do with the questions I've got here they're not in a particular order, so I'm just going to go through them. Some are longer and some are shorter. So let's start off with this one here. So this is from our Show Studio Facebook, and somebody posted a picture of this young model and said, who is this model? So it's a very simple answer. His name is Chuck, and his surname is spelled A-C-H-I-K-E, which I won't try and pronounce, and he's at Premier Model Management, and he's a fantastic model, so just so you know. Anyway, so that's that one dealt with. Another short question that came in on the Show Studio Instagram, which is sent by somebody who goes under the moniker of 0000009110 and says, any chance of restock on the bucket hat? So this is part of the Show Studio e-commerce site, which we run with Machine A, and this is one of the things we're selling, which is a Martin Rose bucket hat. Collaboration with Martin Rose is very nice indeed. We're not restocking the bucket hat, but we do have some more of these bags, which are really lovely. So that's e-commerce question dealt with. So diving straight from that into politics, or things that I post on my Instagram, which tend to be reasonably political because we're living in very political times, and I get very upset about what's happening in politics at the moment, so I tend to rant about it. Well, no, I tend to talk about it on my Instagram, which of course leads to a fair few comments back. So somebody on my Instagram, somebody by the name of Rally, R-A-L-I_Baba, B-A-B-B-A, says, are you a politician artist? That's a new breed then. And then there's some little emoji of somebody crying with laughter. I don't think politician artists are a new breed. I think most artists are political in some shape or form. They're really reflecting often their views of the world, and whether it's Tracy Emin or whether it's Rubens or whoever it is, they're normally responding to some of the politics that are going on at the time. Some artists are very political, so you can look at somebody like Warhol, who's an incredibly political artist in my opinion. A lot of artists are very motivated by the state of the government of the country they're in, or the human rights that are happening. You look at all the war artists, and people like George Grosz, or Otto Dix, or people like that. Incredibly political work. So I would say most artists are political. So I don't think being an artist and being political is something that's new. It's something that I think is pretty much true for nearly every artist. So moving on. This again is on the political thing, where I posted this particular post, where I was just asking a question, and it's one of those questions that can get you a lot of grief on Instagram, because there are some sort of factions of people who don't like any criticism or any questions being asked. And the question I was asking, if Jeremy Corbyn is almost the one thing that's stopping Labour getting elected, then surely Jeremy Corbyn should just stand out of the way and let somebody else take over. That's not to say that that I have those views about Jeremy Corbyn, but it does seem to be that he is the thing that's stopping Labour getting elected. And there must be somebody that has pretty similar views within the Labour Party that could step up and take over, so they can win the next general election, or they could put forward a very coherent and very clear to understand policy on Brexit. So that was the nature of the post. Somebody called Black's Cat, how do you pronounce that?
Yeah, Blacksome Cat.
Thank you, Tom. Which is spelled B-L-A-K-S-M-C-A-T, wrote, at Night, how about you run? You've got policies, the posters and the people. I know it's a scary proposition, but seriously, you could be in charge and lead the charge. Sorry, you could be the change and lead the charge. Keep the good we do have and keep the earth intact. It's very nice, but weirdly, I get a lot of people say that to me on Instagram, or nearly every political post I do, somebody says, oh, you should run, or I'll vote for you, or whatever it is. I have no intention of running for any political office. I really think it's a very cursory background check on my life would eliminate me from any position of public responsibility. So I don't think I'm going to be running for Parliament anytime soon, but it's very nice that you ask. This was on one of my Instagram posts about the roses that I photograph, and somebody called Beemount, B-E-E-M-O-U-N-T, said, "How I wish, sadly stuck in the States, what are the odds of you releasing one print we can purchase?" Well, all the rose pictures I do you can purchase them. You just have to go to either direct message me or go to the Albion Barn website, because I've got an exhibition on the Albion Barn in Oxfordshire at the moment, and all those prints are for sale, so should you wish to buy one, they are for sale. So, moving along. Again, this was something about Brexit and just basically how corrupt the manipulation of the public has been. So somebody asked me, somebody who's I follow actually on Instagram quite a lot, and again I'm going to try and pronounce his or her name, but I think I'm going to do it wrong. Elysium, E-L-E-S-I-U-M, who posts very beautiful paintings. Incidentally, should you want to follow him or her, but I think it's a her. She asks, "How do you stop Brexit?" I'm asking seriously. Stateside, we watch America continue to be wretched while over 50% hate the daily atrocities. I think countries are suffering from horrible government, dictator controls, horrible to witness. Yeah, I totally agree. It is very horrible to witness. What's happening politically across the world now seems to be a move to authoritative, I can't speak today, which is great on an AMA, which is a move towards more populist and dictators, glad I'm doing this, more authoritarian was the word I was trying to say, governments, and less liberal governments. I think that's completely wrong. I've got no idea why it's showing particular resurgence at the moment. I thought really the Second World War had dealt with fascism and the right as a kind of political force. So I find these sort of rather outdated and tried and failed political doctrines strange to see them resurface. I think we're having a really strange time in Britain at the moment. I'm sure you're all perfectly aware of this. We have a Prime Minister who isn't elected by anybody, elected by the very 80,000 people from the Conservative Party who are totally unrepresentative of the population of Britain, who put this man in charge, who is looking like he's dragging us towards a no-deal Brexit, which is very damaging for this country, culturally, economically, in our world standing, everything else. And I can't see why he's doing that. I can't see the ultimate goal. And some notion of all the reasons to put forward, like it's the voice of the people. Well, in that case, what's the problem of asking the people again? If you're confident this was the voice of the people, as it's 3 years down the line, ask the people again and see what they think. So the only reason that people who support Brexit will not do that, in my opinion, is because they think they might lose. And if you think they might lose, it's clearly not the voice of the people. There are so many contradictions in the whole of the Brexit dilemma. It makes very upsetting news nearly every day. Watching people lie to our faces on television. Michael Gove going on one of those programs where they have all the sort of candidates when it was the election for the Tory leader was happening, and saying he would never prorogue Parliament, and saying he would fight not to do it. Matt Hancock doing the same thing. Saying that this is why the people died on the beaches of Normandy, not to, so we had a sovereign government. And yet here they are, all are in cabinet doing exactly the opposite. I've never witnessed such barefaced lies from politicians. They really don't seem to care anymore. And I think that's a trend as well. The truth seems to be something which was previously upheld as a sort of basic thing that politicians operated on. And if they were found out to be lying, they would have to leave office. Now it seems that they can lie with impunity. So I find it all very upsetting, as you can probably tell. So I will move on to things, another question. This is about this post I posted on Instagram, which is of the beautiful model Shalom Harlow. And the question comes from, so hard to try and pronounce his name, so I'm going to leave it to Tom.
Andrea Musat, 10.
Thank you. This isn't the only reason Tom joins me on these AMAs, partly to keep me company, because I'm not sitting here guessing Instagram handles. Adre Musat 10 asks, the shots you did with Shalom in the 90s are, in my opinion, some of your best. Thank you. How was the process of the colouring done, and how long did it take to finish? These are shot on a 10-8 camera, which is actually the camera that's over there, which I can't show you. But they're shot on a 10-8 camera, they're shot on color transparency film, and then developed in color negative processing developer, and that turns them into a high contrast color negative. With a color negative, you can then, in printing, you can then change the colors, and my printer, who is a fantastic gentleman called Brian Dowling, I think one of the most skilled color printers in the world, he invented a system of using acetate masks. So he'd hide some parts of the print and then print those bits that were revealed in a certain color, and he'd change the coloration filtration in the enlarger, and then take the acetate mask off, put another acetate mask back, which revealed another part of the image, and print that in a different color. So you could combine very, very radically different colors on the same print. They would take probably 2 or 3 days to print. So you start off, you get the color negative, and then you separate it out into all the different shades you want to see it in, so strongly yellow, strongly green, strongly blue, etc. So very, very dominant colors in it. You lay them all on the floor and you go from light to dark. You end up with about 200 or 300 prints, and you start walking through those prints and looking to find the bits you like. And then you combine them like a jigsaw, and then Brian Dowling would combine them in the darkroom. So there were incredibly complicated ways of color printing. And of course, it's what we do now on Photoshop and on the image manipulation software that we use so frequently. We can do it with ease. At the time, it was done by hand printing and masking. Literally, my printer would use his hands and bits of acetate to do it. So very sort of hands-on and not at all digital. And just at that moment, digital ways of manipulating the image came into play, and of course it all changed almost overnight. So, it doesn't make it better or worse, but that's the fact of it. So then we have a question. And this has come in on, what's that, Tom?
It's on Instagram. I think it's a response to the question posed on Instagram.
So it's from Antonio Del Monash.
Monash.
Monash. Maybe. Antonio is ANTONIO _DELLE_MONACHE''S. So he or she wrote, inspiring, how long does it take to plan a shoot like the latest for Burberry or Chanel? It takes months, is the truth. For Chanel and for Burberry, both of those campaigns that have just surfaced took months in the planning and the execution and the post-production. It's something I would have thought around 2 months, do you think, from the first moment?
So the plan, I'd say, 2, maybe even a little bit longer. I think Burberry was around 2.
Yeah, it's a long time, and there's lots of decisions that are made, lots of to and fro between myself and Riccardo Tisci or the people at Chanel or whoever it is. It's part of the process. It's what we do, and it's fascinating. So, why we started Show Studio is to show the process of creating fashion imagery like that. It's because all of that process is really important, whether it's pre the shoot or post the shoot. It is all part of the creative process, and each step on that journey, each step in that process, is very, very important and shouldn't be, should be scrutinised and looked at, and is, in my opinion, as important as the shoot itself at the moment you press the shutter or the moment you start filming. So it takes a long time. Okay, so next question. From _BERTHOLDT_ Berthold asks, what's the best way to gain recognition? Do brilliant work is how do you gain recognition. Do something you think is important. Photography, filmmaking, any of the visual arts are forms of communication. So you have to be saying something that you are burning to say and something that's interesting to say. Speak with your heart and speak with passion and speak with integrity and speak with bravery and speak with sort of a view towards the future. You have to speak from your heart, and it has to be important to you, otherwise it's not important to the people who will be looking at it. If your pictures mean nothing, if you're just doing them for money or for fame or for those reasons, it'll show in the pictures. The best way to get recognition is to simply do brilliant work. And you have to do work that really matters to you. That's the only way it can be brilliant. If the photographs you take or the films you do not matter to you, they will not be brilliant. It's like asking somebody to talk to somebody who doesn't really care what they're saying. They're not interested. And it's the same with visual communication. If you don't care enough about it, it will not be interesting to other people. So, moving on again. I'm not going to try and pronounce this person's name, but it's CGSAIKO. They said, will I move to Europe? I guess this is depending if Britain crashes out or comes out of the European Union. I'd really like to move to Portugal. I'd be very interested to move to Greece. I like Scandinavian countries. I grew up in France and grew up in Belgium. So yes, the idea to move to Europe is very strong. If Brexit happens, it looks like it's going to be incredibly damaging for the British fashion industry. I think the latest estimate was £900 million worth of damage that it would do instantly, very quickly. So it's not great. Brexit will absolutely be catastrophic for the British fashion industry, which is trying desperately to stand on its own 2 feet and trying to make sure that it's important and maintains part of the schedule. If it's hard to get models in and out of Britain because of visas or that sort of thing, it's hard to get clothes in and out because of carnets. If you have disruption at the ports and with customs, it's very hard to move clothes quickly around Europe. So it will be very, very damaging for the fashion industry in particular. And you might say, well, you just care about fashion. Well, it is my industry. It's not something I wouldn't care about. And there are lots of people who work within it. It is the 3rd largest industry in Britain. So I guess it's important in that way. So yes, I would consider moving Show Studio to Europe. I would consider moving myself along with it. You didn't know that, did you, Tom? We're going to move to Europe.
It's quite nice to know, to be honest.
Where should we go?
Paris.
Yeah, Paris is nice.
Yeah,
They'll have us. So, from @_Wilkinson, apart from natural drive to exceed personal boundaries, what motivates your creativity? It's obvious in a way. It's just interest in life. It's just what you get excited about. It's what life is. It's very continually challenging, and as long as you're true to what you feel, then creativity is natural. It's what you do to express how you feel about life. Okay, so somebody called Oxball asked, do I miss McQueen? Yes, I miss McQueen a lot. Alexander McQueen and I were, I think it's fair to say we were friends. We were certainly friends through work. I had a lot of love for him, and I guess he didn't mind me too much either. So yeah, I miss him a lot. It's, somebody so important creatively. What can I say? Creatively. Thank you, Tom. Somebody so important creatively, who encouraged me and inspired me to do really exciting imagery. I miss a lot. Of course you do. There isn't another Alexander McQueen. Like there's not another John Galliano. These people are absolute artists in their own right, and they're in what they do, and they don't come along very often. So I had, I was lucky enough to work with both of those people and still work with John. They're incredibly creative, incredibly passionate about what they do or did. And so of course I miss them. I miss them because of the work that Lee McQueen, sorry, I miss them. I miss Alexander McQueen, because of the work that he would encourage me to do and the projects that he would come to me with. And I miss the clothes he made. And I miss him as a person. Of course I do. He took his own life tragically, and I think, weirdly, I think he was obviously at a low ebb, but I think if he hadn't taken whatever he took that evening and just come around the next morning, I don't think that he was heading towards a sort of a trough of despair. I think it was more miserable experimentation with different drugs, but I have no idea about that. It's my own personal thoughts. But I don't think he was. I spoke to him a week before. He didn't mention anything about being depressed or. Anyway, yes, of course I miss him. So, next question is by somebody called Tanay, TANAY.BABAR. It says, how can I grow my business as a photographer internationally? One for you, Tom?
Pre-Brexit or post-Brexit?
I guess it's post-Brexit.
Well, I guess, as we said, it is going to become, hypothetically, it's going to become a lot more difficult to move clothes, models around Europe. But I guess it depends what level you're starting at and where you are in life, because if you're just starting out, it's probably very important to look inwards and try and grow yourself personally. If you're already a fully fledged business, like Show Studio, maybe move to Paris with us.
It depends what you mean, and Tom's quite right. It depends where you are in your personal career. If you're asking how can I grow my business as a photographer internationally, a simple answer would be to start an Instagram account and start showing what you do on Instagram. That's international. One of the lovely things about new media and social media and all things that we work with is that they are international, that we don't have national barriers or boundaries. So that's also why I find it very hard to get involved in nationalism. I'm not at all nationalistic, And I find it very hard when people, I find it very difficult to understand why people are, especially as the things that we do go out to an international audience. You know, I've got no idea who's watching this. It could be people in Mexico or Russia or Bolivia or anywhere in the world. So I'm not trying to talk to a British audience. I'm not trying to talk to a European audience. I'm just talking to people across the globe. And I think that you should treat your business in the same way. That you should realize you are automatically, if you're working on the internet, you're automatically working internationally. So, following on from that, somebody who goes under the name of, do you want to try and pronounce that, Tom?
Montejo.
Thank you. Montejo wrote, what has been the biggest impact the internet has had on your work? Massive, actually. Sorry, Tom.
Sorry.
It's a massive impact. It means that I don't have to go through magazines anymore. I can say pretty much what I want. And that's not just true of me. It's true of any visual artist. You can use platforms. You know, back in the day it was Tumblr, now it seems to be more often Instagram, but you can use any sort of social media platform to get your work out there, whereas before you had to go through pretty fixed channels, so you'd have to go through magazines, and magazines of course have a particular agenda depending on the magazine, so they would make you work a particular way, which might or might not be what you want to do, and they would only go out to a few people. So whereas I can get through to 1 million plus people pretty easily, if you were working for a magazine back before the internet, you would get through to 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, maybe not much more than that. So you get through to a lot more people. You can say pretty much what you want, which means you can be much more experimental with your work. Magazines would tend to err on the side of caution in terms of the visuals that they would encourage you to make. So for instance, if it became too abstract, they wouldn't like it. How many abstract covers have you seen of Vogue or Dazed or ID? So the work tends to become more realistic in that way. It's not particularly good in my opinion. It should be more realistic. I don't see why abstraction is a bad thing. So for reasons which are fair for magazines but not necessarily fair for the artists who work within them, those magazines would push people to work in a particular way. So the internet freed us up from that, and it allowed us to get feedback back. So before, when you worked for a magazine, when you worked for a magazine, you would put your work into the magazine, so you spend 3 months creating a story, publish it in the magazine, and then there's no feedback. Literally, tumbleweed goes by. There's no mechanism for people to say anything about your story. So that's, for a performing artist, which I think is what we are, the idea that you have no contact with your audience, and your audience has no contact with you in any tangible way, isn't a good thing. I can't believe that many of the sort of musicians that we see on stage would be happy to perform in front of empty auditoriums. And of course they thrive on the crowd, they thrive on the audience. And the same is true of theatre, and the same is true of many different mediums. I think photography also felt a little bit like it needed to be in contact with its audience. So the internet's changed all of that. And it's allowed me to see a lot more of the creative talent that exists across the world. And I think that the lovely thing is it's brought the artist and the audience much closer together without there being a third party making profit from that. Normally, or it used to be before the internet, the system was that you could publish your book, you could sing your song, you could make your film, but somebody had to give that the okay for everybody to see it, and that okay would be only given if that person could think that they could make some money from your work. That's not true anymore. You can publish a book on the internet, or you can publish your film, or broadcast your film, or put your photograph on there, and nobody has to make any money from that. It's either good or bad, and that depends solely on what your audience thinks and what you think. But it isn't about somebody else saying, well, if you change the ending of this film, then I'll put my money behind it. That, for me, is a slightly dodgy relationship that business has with the arts, and I don't think it's particularly healthy. So I think the internet overall is a pretty good thing. But there's lots of questions that arise from it, but that's not your question. Okay, so this is something that came in on my Instagram. I've just been on for 3 weeks holiday in Cornwall, which is all very lovely, and I published this picture, which is what I can see from my window of my house, and they've asked, where in Cornwall is this? It's in Port Isaac, which is on the north coast of Cornwall, which is it's on the Atlantic Ocean, so you get these huge sort of visions of the sea that stretches for miles right to the horizon, and it's amazing to watch. I mean, every day I look out of my window and you see the clouds rolling in from 30 miles or 40 miles or 50 miles away, the sky changing all the time. It's a very interesting part of the world. It's not like going on holiday to the Mediterranean for somewhere really hot, where it's just beautiful blue skies all day long. It's actually quite often rainy and it's quite often stormy, but it's very beautiful. So yes, it's Port Isaac. Okay, so another one from Latifa Cornelius. Cornelius, is that right?
Yeah, it's a pretty good guess.
What places make you feel inspired to create? Here. Any studio I'm in. I guess you mean sort of geographical places. It depends what you're creating. Anything. I find LA very inspiring. I've just been in Arizona, that was inspiring. Wyoming, that was inspiring. They're all inspiring. So it's not really that the place is inspiring and where other places aren't. It's more your desire to be inspired by being there. Tom was in Nice for his holiday in the south of France. Was it inspiring?
It was very inspiring. Probably not in the same way as Wyoming, but
different things.
Yeah.
But you said there was the Nice Museum of Modern Art.
Yeah, which had an incredible exhibition on Yves Klein, had exhibitions on op art, and you come away very fulfilled. It was extremely well curated, and I guess not so much inspired by the natural landscape in Nice, but that sort of it was one of the better exhibitions I've been to in the last sort of year.
So that was inspiring, but that's a museum. I guess it's places there to be inspired. I think I particularly gravitate towards sort of Mediterranean countries. I love North Africa. I'm incredibly inspired in Tokyo, in Asia. I've never been to Russia, so I wouldn't know. But everywhere is inspiring because it's just somewhere to experience. So, not a very good answer, I'm sorry, waffly. A much more succinct answer can be given to this question, which is from somebody whose name I'm not going to try and pronounce, but it's _ASHIK _AL_ALWALATHI. Which was your first camera? It was a Praktica Super TL. And it was a camera I had in the 1970s. It was owned by my father, and he would let me borrow it on Saturday afternoons. Not quite sure what he was doing for the rest of the week, but I was allowed to borrow it on a Saturday afternoon, which is how I started photography. And I graduated from a Praktica Super TL, which was about in 1977. And I think my next camera was either a Nikon or an Olympus Pen EE half-frame, which is a nice little camera. In the days where you had film, you'd have 36 exposures on a film, maximum, and a half-frame camera would cut each one of those frames in half. So instead of going 36, you'd have 72. And so that was my second camera that I remember. The Praktica Super TL was pretty basic, but fine for what I needed. And the Olympus Pen EE was even more basic. It had a fixed focus where you could do, I think it was a portrait, a tree or a mountain. Yeah. There's only 3 settings you could have. And you could press the shutter with one hand and wind on with your thumb. So it was a very useful little kind of snap camera. I mean, a bit the way that our phones are now. And I used it a lot in that way. It's a sort of notebook, really, where you look at something, you click and take it, and it doesn't seem to be it's just a way of grabbing something you see around you for future reference or just because it inspires you. So I do a similar thing on my Instagram now. When I see things that kind of catch my eye or I like, I just take a picture and sometimes I publish them on my Instagram. I use my phone really as a sort of notebook for a lot of things, just because it's so easy to use. Anyway, so another question from ITGBARRON, G Baron. Hey Nick, are there any books, essays that affected the way you see image making? Tom, because I've asked you to come and do this with me, I feel I'm hogging the limelight. Any books that have inspired the ways you see image making?
Yes, but probably not in the sense of necessarily photographic books. I think I always have a much more sort of vivid response from actually more novels and literature-based books. And
so what's inspiring you now?
Well, we were talking this morning about Kafka. I've never read Kafka before, but I started reading Metamorphosis, and it's, for me, a completely different way of writing, and his way of writing specifically is extremely descriptive. And I can't help but, your mind imagines and reimagines and reimagines all of these things in all its different formats every time you think about it or remember it. And as soon as I read that, it makes me want to sort of go out and do a shoot based on it. I mean, you were saying that you did a shoot with Simon Foxton.
Based on Kafka's novel, Metamorphosis, the one you're reading,
So I think, for me, it's completely away from photography, but that then sort of sets the mood for how I want to go out and photograph things.
This person's only asking for books that inspired us, so or affected the way you see image making. I think the book that's a little bit might be a bit surprising, that inspired me most and has throughout my life, is Alvin Toffler, who is a writer that died 3 or 4 years ago. He wrote a lot in the 1970s, early 80s. Future Shock, The Third Wave are 2 great Alvin Toffler books, and they predicted where we are now. They predicted the huge world change we're seeing and the sort of reaction against it from people who are frightened of the future. So the sort of, the ISIS or the, Brexit or Trump, all those sorts of things, it's kind of predicted in those books. So I think that Alvin Toffler's The Third Wave and Future Shock are really interesting, and they gave me a very strong viewpoint on life. There's lots of different books. I've never particularly been keen on Sontag. A lot of the photo theorists I don't particularly adhere to, partly because they're written at such a different time, and then, they really don't deal with the sort of photography or image making that I do. But they're interesting to read. They're people's opinions, and people's opinions are always exciting and interesting to look at. But I don't think there are any other books I want to go to. Most of, not huge amounts of books on every monograph of any photographer that's ever worked that's inspiring, and books, compendiums of different sorts of photography. So lots of those books. But as a novel, or not, it's a novel, I'd say Alvin Toffler, The Third Wave.
Yeah, I have actually just finished reading Avedon's biography.
Which I haven't got around to. Any good?
It's fantastic, yeah. It's about this thick.
Which I haven't got around to.
That is definitely something which is very inspiring and very informative, and it's something that I didn't want to put down, but still took me a year to finish it.
So Avedon's biography is great. I think Man Ray, the book about Man Ray, is very good as well. It's a really good Man Ray.
I haven't read that.
So those, but I haven't read either of them. So actually, I read a book on Helmut Newton. That was good. There's Patti Smith's book on Maplethorpe. Fantastic. Anyway,
Just kids.
Yeah. So this is from Slutty Deity. Oh, that's my bell for saying I've been speaking for half an hour, which I promise I wouldn't exceed. Slutty Deity asks, biggest change needed now? Honesty. Honesty in politics. People need to, in my opinion, be honest and truthful. And I think that's the worst thing I'm seeing at the moment, is a lack of honesty in political discourse. So I think that's really what's needed now, is to have some honesty, so people can make decisions which are informed and not misled, like we were for the referendum on Brexit. I'm going to take one more. I'm going to answer one more question just because it stared me in the face. And I know that a lot of people who look at my work are either ex-Gaga fans or continuing to be Gaga fans. Can you ever be an ex-Gaga fan? Probably not. You're probably a Gaga fan for life. Or were you a Gaga fan? I'd say this. I would careful how you answer that one on live camera, by the way.
I'm a lifelong Gaga fan.
I thought you were, Tom. So this person, whose name is IHANDDDDDDD, asked, what's your favourite Gaga moment? What's your favourite moment with Gaga? There were so many. Some I really, unfortunately, can't tell you about. I think when we transformed her into a boy, into a man, we working with Gaga, and I think we came up with this idea that we should transform her into a man, which she named Joe Calderoni. And it was at a show studio in our place when we used to be in Mayfair in Bruton Place. And she was with her assistant, her PA, and her other people. Anyway, we took her into makeup. I think Sam McKnight did the hair and Val Garland did the makeup. And they literally gave her the black queer full slick back and put a little sort of shading around her face. And when her assistant came back in, who had been out shopping or doing something, she said, "Where's Gaga?" while standing next to Gaga. And she had no idea that this person that we transformed her in was actually just Gaga dressed up as a boy. And then she went down to a particularly strange little room that we used to have at Show Studio, which just came with the building, which was all black. And it had a very low ceiling, which was black, and a black cloth. Because it was one of the building we used to be in Bruton Place was one of the is the oldest standing barn in Mayfair. It was just a very strange building from hundreds of years ago, but it was still there, and that's where we were. And we filmed Gaga in this little black room, and we put a urinal on the wall and got Gaga to pee in it like a man. And I think that's probably one of the moments that sticks out for me working with Lady Gaga. But there are very many, and as I promised to be half an hour, I'm only going to pick one of them. But if you want to hear another one, just ask me another question, and we'll see if we can answer it. Okay. Thank you much. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.